It's my pleasure to welcome you all here today to the stunning surroundings of the Mandarin Oriental Hyde Park. We are very grateful to the General Manager, Torsten van Dulleman, Lionel Laches, Director of Food and Beverage, and Francisco Hernandez, Executive Chef at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group, and of course, Chris Thompson, the hotel's Director of IT, because none of this would work otherwise. Thank you also to Adetta and her team for looking after us here with the drinks this afternoon. Thank you for your hospitality. You do it very well. Thank you. I'm sure you have all noticed that we are also welcoming Champagne Bollinger to this special plenary today, and we would like to say thank you to Victoria Carfanton, Director of Champagne Bollinger UK, who we are hoping is with us today. I think she's running a little bit late. Our thanks also to Flying Fish, Woods Food Service, Jeroboam's Trade, and Barry Calabow for the food and beverage they have kindly donated for the lunch today. Just one note, there is a slight change to the menu today. Instead of stuffed morel mushrooms, we have stuffed courgette flowers, which sound lovely. Now, let me introduce you to our guest speaker today, Kate Nichols OBE. Kate has been the CEO of UK Hospitality, the powerful voice representing the broad hospitality sector since its inception in 2018. Prior to that, she worked as CEO and Strategic Affairs Director of the Association of Licensed Nautical Retailers. Some of you will remember the ALMR. Kate sits on the government's Tourism, Hospitality and Food and Drink Sector Councils, where she represents the hospitality and tourism sector. As a passionate advocate for inclusivity in hospitality, Kate is also the government's first disability ambassador for hospitality. Kate is the chair of the Institute of Licensing, a board member of Best Bar None, and a trustee of Hospitality Action and Springboard. Kate has previously chaired the Tourism Alliance London Nighttime Commission and London Tourism Recovery Board. In her early career, Kate initially worked as a researcher in the House of Commons and European Parliament on food, employment and environmental policy, before joining Whitbread to work in strategic affairs. She has extensive experience as a political and strategic communications consultant and is a graduate of Fitzwilliam College, Cambridge and King's College, London. Kate, please do join me on stage. Thank you, Kate. We're going to jump straight into a couple of questions, if that's all right.
That's perfectly all right.
I know you prefer that. So, back in early November 2024, post the Chancellor's budget, you said, "The budget is the latest blow for hospitality businesses. In the short term, the tsunami of employment costs coming in April will ultimately do more to hamper growth than incentivise it. Increases to employer national insurance contribution and wages will make it harder for businesses to support employment and invest in their businesses. Avoiding the business rates cliff edge, which happens next month, was critical, and it was important that some relief was extended. However, the reduced level of 40% is another cost that businesses must deal with. For those small and medium-sized operators, their rates bills will still go up in April. All of this means that 2025 will be painful for hospitality, with an increased annual tax bill of £3 billion for the sector." I guess you've been inundated with messages and requests from businesses to support since then. Are you able to get to the right people in government to raise the continued concerns of the hospitality sector, and are they listening?
Yes is the short answer to the first bit. Yes, I'm able to get to the right people in government. That comes from the fact that we've got that big one united voice. So I'm kind of the arrowhead, if you like. The strength in depth of our membership and the breadth of our membership is what gives us the ability to knock on doors and walk down the street. and the fact that we go from 700 member companies, between them operating 150,000 outlets across the UK. They're a single site independent restaurant, pub, bar, contract catering business, all the way through to the national chains of hotels and the big public sector catering businesses. Between them, they employ over 3 million people. That's what gives me the ability to say we need a seat at the table. And I know seat at the table has been quite a big thing for many years, and that's why UK Hospitality was formed, was to be able to create that. But it is that unity and it's that unified voice that allows us to do that. Coming through COVID, that was the first time really that government recognised hospitality as a sector, as opposed to a group of individual disparate businesses with a disparate voice. But it is that discipline of message. So we do get to now go down when you've got, the government has what's called the B5, CBI, FSB, IOD, and Chamber of Commerce, and then they have the sector groups that go alongside it. So we now go down once a month, once a quarter, to meet the ministers in Downing Street, the Chancellor, the number 10, and the policy teams there. We do get to go alongside finance, energy, retail, manufacturing. So we are being listened to. We have got that seat at the table, which for many years eluded us. And it's about making sure that we've got that strong collective voice to go and tell them exactly what happened. So as soon as the budget hit, I was back into Downing Street to the Chancellor, to the Prime Minister the next day, to be able to explain what the impact of the changes had been. The change in the threshold in particular and the disproportionate impact, something that they hadn't factored in. Everything else, they kind of rolled the pitch. They talked to us about, if we did this, what happens? The change in the threshold, totally unprecedented, the most regressive tax change, hit our sector particularly hard. It's 4 times as impactful as the increase in the rate. So we were straight back in there to be able to explain it. You mentioned the sector councils that I sit on. That means that once a month, once a quarter again, I'm with the relevant ministers of tourism, hospitality, food. I speak to the Secretary of State. I'm meeting the Secretary of State for business on a regular basis to be able to talk about the impact of this on the industrial strategy, delivery of the government's objectives. I've gone straight back in to say, the Monday after the budget, met the business secretary who said my priority is growth, 80% employment and regeneration of the high street. And you kind of go, and what have you just done? How do you do that? What does that mean? And one of the things that I do is to get the information from the members at grassroots level very rapidly. What does this actually mean in practice? What are you now not able to do? Does that mean the increase in the bill means you're not employing somebody, you're not taking on an apprentice, you're not able to do X, Y, and Z, and present it back to them very rapidly? These are politicians who understand politics, but don't understand the day-to-day, and they don't understand the P&L. And so my job is to translate what a P&L means and what the operators are telling me into something political. Are they listening? Are they hearing? Is the $64 million question. Yes, they're listening. They do still invite me back in. And there is a balance to be able to go. You have to be around that table. You have to have the authority and the evidence and the data. And you have to be able to present it in a compelling, meaningful way without overclaiming, but with the validity of the businesses behind you. And you have to present solutions. You can't just go in and shout at the fringes. You won't get invited back. It might happen once, but it doesn't happen time and time again. And everybody in this room needs me to be there fighting at the front line and telling them on a day in, day out basis what it really means in practice. So yes, they're listening. Yes, they're hearing. Are they acting upon it in a way that we would want? No. Are they able to give everything that we would want to have to get those businesses back into a viable shape, to repair the P&Ls? No. Anybody who looks and listens and hears what they're saying about the state of the public finances knows that in reality we just don't have the cash to be able to put in place the measures that we would all see as being sensible, and there are other sectors that are also bleeding out.
Okay, so it's a long journey.
It's a long journey, and it's a fight to share a voice. It's not just about making sure that the hospitality voice is heard, it's that it's heard more importantly than retail, than social care, than health, than everything else, than farmers.
Okay, so, yeah.
And look, very easy. Put some tractors down Whitehall and Westminster. It doesn't necessarily achieve results.
No. So Sacha Lord said on the Sunday show with Laura Kunzberg yesterday, he said that the government are completely out of touch, especially for SMEs. He said they are in a worse situation now than in COVID because at least then there was financial support. And the government urgently needs to look at the 5th largest industry in the UK and recognise it as such. And I think that's where a lot of the disappointment comes from the industry, isn't it? That it's not doesn't seem to be considered as important as one of the largest industries.
Yes, I mean, this government, I think more than any other, does recognise the value and the contribution. There's a disconnect. It's a very schizophrenic government. So, they do talk about the everyday economy, the foundational economy on which the rest of business sits. And that's hospitality and tourism in a particular extent. They talk about, tourism is as close as you can get to free money for the government and for the country as it's possible to get, because it's exports. It's an export earner. People spend more eating and drinking out in our venues, foreign visitors, than all of our food and drink exports put together. It's the fastest growing services export industry. It gives Britain its soft power and capital. The reason you don't have bankers exiting to Frankfurt is because London is a much nicer place to do business. Every single survey that is done about London as a place to do business and the UK as a place to do business cites our brilliant hotels, pubs, bars, restaurants that mean people can have a conducive environment. The government knows and recognises this. The Prime Minister talks about it. They do those kind of things at their investment summits. They just see it as a backdrop against which it happens. And so the disconnect is that they don't realise that they have to do something to make sure that those businesses are in place, are thriving, are flourishing, to be able to deliver what they want us to do. The business secretary, the industrial strategy, again, has the high street hospitality, has tourism, has hospitality running through it as an enabler of growth, a foundation for growth, and particularly connecting places and people. It's just that they prioritise growth in the 8 fastest growing sectors. So our job is to explain how you don't get the aerospace, the automotive, the pharmaceuticals, the life sciences, unless you've got us there.
For sure.
You don't get the civil service moving to Darlington, to the economic campus, unless you've got really good quality, and I'm allowed to say it because it's my area where I grew up. It had pretty poor pubs, bars, restaurants, cafes. Unless the civil servants moving from London can get a chai latte in Darlington, they're not going to move. Equally, Battersea and King's Cross, you don't get that regeneration unless you've got the brilliant places to eat and drink. So it's making sure that government understands that and sees it. And then it's about our people, which is where I think there's a big overlap with the Royal Academy. The brightest export that you get from some of the areas, Concert and Durham, where I grew up, Blackpool, we export our brightest and best into other industries, but not everybody growing up in those sectors can be an astrophysicist. And if you want people to stay in their place, invest in their place, upskill and learn, you need tourism and hospitality thriving in all those parts of the country. That's the blind spot that the government's got. They think it just happens, and I fear that April, because it's such a big tax bombshell, will mean that we go backwards in order to go forwards.
And that also connects to the state of the landscape in further education at the moment as well, the lack of investment in further education.
Yeah.
Maybe I can ask you, I'm going to skip a question and ask you on that basis, in terms of identifying hospitality as a human, if you like.
Yeah.
How can we help you? How can the members of the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts help to, we're kind of a small fish in a big pond, but we've got some strong, powerful voices within the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts.
I think it's using those voices. I can go so far, but there's a limit to how many times TV programmes will have me on the news. I'm speaking on BBC Breakfast on the Spring Statement Day on Wednesday. That means I am not allowed to do BBC on Tuesday or Thursday, and they might rest me on the Today programme for a couple of weeks too. So we need those voices in the industry who can also vocalise what I've just been talking about. We will equip people with any speaking notes that they need. We're always asked by media to have examples of case studies if people are willing to put their head above the parapet. I know some of those messages are difficult, and therefore I will still continue to talk about job losses and price increases. I realise that's challenging for small businesses to talk about in their communities, but we can always provide those platforms. The other thing you can do is to give me your case studies. You know, that's what brings it to life. I need to be able to say, as a result of this tax change, there's 3 apprentices that haven't been taken on, or you've had to streamline and take out the menu, or the organic British beef has to be taken off and you've got to have something that is a cheaper cut because you can't manage those costs. Or I'm not opening a restaurant. And they can be given to me anonymously, but those are the compelling stories for me to take straight back into the ministers when I meet them.
Okay. In terms of longer positivity, you also stated in November that you were pleased that the Chancellor was implementing the permanently lower level of business rates.
Yes.
To recognise the importance of the high street and the role it plays. But have you seen any more detail on this and how it will be communicated to the sector in the time frame?
Well, the legislation is going through Parliament at the moment now, so it is being confirmed, it is being written into law. This is a permanently lower multiplier on all business rates bills. So for those with a rateable value of less than 500,000, the government has said that they will do a 20p discount off the multiplier in perpetuity. So we don't have that challenging annual assessment where we're going to have to fight for it on an annual basis, which means it can be built into valuations, it can be built into rental calculations for those who've got rents. At the moment, that can't be built in. 20p discount off the current multipliers would take the multiplier down to around 28, 29p and 33p. So it's quite a big discount. It means that you've got that flat level of roughly equivalent to 40%. Crucially, it's per premises, so anybody who's got a multi-site, it goes across all the premises, it's not capped. There's no state aid, there's no 110,000 on a rolling 3-year basis, which has got lots of people capped out. So it is positive going forward, and it's the first down payment is how they've described it on business rates, root and branch reform. The bigger one is valuation and valuation methodology, so we can get those multipliers set properly. We should get the announcement of that in October.
Okay. But the whole programme will take until 2026?
April 2026 is when it'll hit bills. We've pushed as much as we can to try and get that brought forward to this year, but they've resisted it. We're also pushing for the NIC change to be pushed back to next April so you can balance it out a little bit more, swings and roundabouts. I'm not under any illusions that that business rates relief is as much as people would like. And I'm not under any illusions that it offsets the NICs, but it is a permanent solution to something that's been a perennial problem. And nobody in the sector has paid full rate since 2019, thanks to the sort of work of my team. We've done that on an annual basis. If we can get that put in for some certainty, that helps in the longer term.
Okay. So a glimmer of light, okay.
But also a sign that the government, also on the back of that, the government wants to do a high street strategy, wants to do a small business strategy, which looks at what other changes do you need to unlock growth in the high street, particularly around leases and rents and planning and licensing and some of those challenges that face business, and there are additional costs of doing business built into it. Again, I'm not under any illusions, nothing is going to offset £3.4 billion of tax this April.
Food and rural affairs. Are those two people particularly sympathetic to the crisis that's going on in the sector?
Yeah, the third one I would add is the most important one after the Chancellor is Johnny Reynolds, the Business Secretary. Hospitality, High Street hospitality, sits in the business department. There is a priority and a hierarchy of departments in Whitehall that you want to have as your sponsor. All of them put pressure on number 10 and number 11 to lobby. The business department is the best one. So Gareth Thomas in there is the hospitality minister, Johnny Reynolds is the Secretary of State. Both are really sympathetic. Both have High Street underneath their jurisdiction. It was Johnny Reynolds I met who said, I want to deliver growth, 80% employment and regeneration of the High Street. I know hospitality is critical to delivering that for me, and ditto tourism. Tourism and inbound tourism and hotels. Patricia, who's here today as well from Visit Britain, and I sit on the Visitor Economy Task Force, and Kat that's working with Chris Bryant on a visitor economy strategy. That's got a target, and the strategy will come out in the next 6 months, all of these strategies. That's got a target of 50 million inbound visitors to the UK. So that's 10 million more than we currently have, that we need to find a way of doing it. So you're going to have to look at some measures that drive demand, free up supply, and reduce business costs. And the free up supply, there's some solutions there that we need to work on people, labour, skills, workforce capital, all of those kind of big elements that we've had conversations about with Royal Academy. That's something that's going to be looked at there. So Chris Bryant, I probably meet him on a monthly basis. Steve Reed, I would meet him on a quarterly basis, but I meet the Food Minister, Daniel Zeichner, on a monthly basis. Gareth Thomas and the Secretary of State of Business, I meet them on a monthly basis. So there's no blocks, and again, the benefit that you've got with UK hospitality going from an independent fine dining or high street cafe through to the largest chains and the public sector and contract caterer, we're too big not to be at the table, so we have those meetings, so we can, if we've got something to say, they will meet with us.
Good, okay. I'm going to ask you a question on behalf of one of our members, Paul Askew, who you know. He has asked me to say, to position it firstly, he said he wants to tell you that this comes from the perspective of a chef patron-led SME restaurant business.
Yeah.
Like so many of us in the room today, we operate our businesses with passion and drive, with skilled brigades that make quality fresh food from scratch each day. We employ a lot of people. We would like that to continue. Why is it that successive governments ignore our calls for VAT reform in line with Europe, most recently Ireland and Germany? Surely 10% of something is better than 20% of nothing when businesses go bust. There is a question in there.
It is, no, and it is, it's a perennial challenge, and businesses like Paul's are so important to their local communities and local economies, and socially as well. They provide great routes through. You know, it's exactly what I was talking about, those routes through. For somebody working in Liverpool to have the aspiration and be able to work in their local area rather than feeling they have to come down to London to excel and be at the centre of excellence. And they're at the sharp end of all of these costs, and it is a huge challenge. Coming out of COVID, these businesses were closed for 2 years. They're very heavily indebted, and they continue to push government on both debt and energy as big areas that would make an impact there. And they are trying to be able to invest in people, in place, and in continuing to grow. And their margins have been decimated, so they are struggling. Around a third of the sector is operating at or below break even, a quarter have no cash reserves. Now, the other side is the Treasury. And I don't like the term, but they are a bit of a blob. And they are very blinkered in the way that they view things in economic circumstances. They paint in primary colours and they paint in big picture. And if hospitality doesn't exist, well, those people and those businesses and that energy would go elsewhere. So there's a couple of things that they say back, and it's really hard to be able to articulate it to businesses because it's not what business wants to hear. But our sector is known as being a sector of SMEs and a sector of entrepreneurs. And where you get one business failing, you get another starting up. And we've always got that Cinderella effect, or a phoenix effect is what they describe it as. And they look at those big numbers and they say, you know, that yes, you will see business failure, but as you come through that, the market will be better for those that remain, survival of the fittest. People will have access to talent. It will make them invest more in people, in productivity, in marketing, in improvements. And the sector is self-healing. And unfortunately, we are. So, you know, you look at a lot of what is being said around the tax changes. Yes, you're going to see independents fail. At a multi-site level, and I'm doing everything I can to stop that. At a multiple level, you've got people who will just freeze investment, put up prices, and for some of the luxury end, you can afford to put up the prices without it damaging consumer confidence, and people will hunker down and ride it out until demand comes back. And consumer demand will come back, confidence will come back. There will be signals and changes that mean you do get those inbound visitors who spend more in our venues. And the Chancellor, at this week's spring statement and later on, and the Prime Minister could give people in the UK permission to spend, confidence to go out and spend. Disposable incomes are rising, wages are rising faster than inflation at the moment, but people are not feeling confident enough to spend. So it is challenging. So I don't think it's necessarily that there's a lack of appreciation, and I talk I'm sure probably Patricia does too, we talk on a regular basis to lots of other sectors of the economy who wish they had the profile that hospitality, tourism and our sector gets. You know, for 5 years we have been weekly in the news about challenges and issues and areas that we need to. People come to us on a regular basis about the health of the economy, the health of consumers. People are talking about tourism as a generator of growth for the first time. Lots of other sectors would kill for that profile. Okay. It's not translating through, and I appreciate that, it's not translating through, it's not cutting through into meaningful changes, but this idea that we are somehow singled out for poorer treatment is not the case, and certainly not with this government. Everybody in business is being singled out and hit.
Okay. The Chancellor's spring statement you've mentioned is on Wednesday.
Yes.
What do you think we might see in that one?
Very little that's meaningful to anybody in this room, in reality, which is good. We don't want any. I mean, I'd love for her to stand up and say, we recognise that the challenges in April, we got it wrong, I will postpone the NIC threshold change, I will give a VAT cut, I will do X, Y and Z. It's not going to happen. The spring statement will be about how tough and how tight the economy is, how little room for manoeuvre she's got. It will be a justification for why she isn't doing more. And the bigger message for all of us is around spending. And particularly for those of us who operate on high streets in town and city centres, you've got big redundancies coming in the civil service, which is still the largest employer in the country. You've got cuts in public services, so customers are going to feel an age of austerity, and that's the bigger challenge we've got around confidence, and that's partly why the Treasury is tin-eared to calls for big tax cuts for particular sectors, or big spending that would detract from public services.
Okay.
So we do have to be, and that's my job. You guys don't have to be. You can just, I'll be the sponge. You can throw it all at me. I know the challenges, I know the difficulties. I have to be cognizant of political realities when I go and talk to them. Mm-hmm. And if you've got no money for the NHS or railways or anything like that, or all of their priorities, the reality, going back to Paul's question about a VAT cut, our Treasury works on very basic economics and accountancy. Money in, money out, straight away. Can't wait for it to come through and advance it. The VAT cut would cost £8 billion a year.
Yeah.
We've got to invest
sense on paper.
It's a really difficult discussion. We know in the long run it would generate jobs, growth and investment. But if you were to do that for every sector...
Yeah. Okay. We've got a couple of questions from the audience. Bill, I think you've got a question for Kate.
It's kind of changed.
That's okay. you can do too.
No, only because I was with Paul. I was going to talk about government understanding how big this sector is, how successful we are. Normally, historically, we fuel growth. You know,
yes.
Concentrate on hospitality and our ability to get young people out of not working into work. That all made sense, and that's kind of with Paul, why are they doing this? I mean, we've been to hell and back post-COVID. The world of hospitality is suffering. But then listening to you articulate everything that you are doing, it just occurred to me that we need to, this room needs to, find a way to help you grow your voice, because you're the only voice that we have. So you're at the table at least where none of us here are. So we're back to Lisa and Adam and I and the team thinking, well, Christ, we're going to have to take the fight to government because they've got other areas to concentrate on, and sadly, you know, they're not in that top 5.
Yeah, but it's also changing it to a positive, because there's lots of other sectors that are not in that top 5.
Yeah,
and therefore, you know, it's about being relentlessly optimistic, because this government doesn't tend to work on a sort of, or doesn't respond very well to victimhood. Because it's kind of like we're all in this together. We can debate whether this is a good way of them approaching it or not. Labour politicians, they're largely millennial, but the Labour Party in any case is like this. They are much more transactional. than the Tory party is, but in a different way. So the Tory party, the last government that we got used to dealing with for 14 years, we would go to them and we would say, if you did this, we could deliver, dun, 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 dun. And we've got that narrative across. The Labour Party, you have to go and do, I can do this, we can do this, here's the solution. And on the back of that, will you now look at X, Y, and Z, which might happen 2 years down the line. So part of it is about what can we do to create our own solutions within the industry to help get people through this, but also that will help us tackle some of our perennial challenges. And one of those is around labour and human capital, and it's about making sure that we've got the really good quality training in from basic entry level all the way up and through to be able to do that. And at the moment, there's nothing that's accredited at the entry level. There's nothing that's common. There's no mechanism for a young person coming into our sector to be able to say, I've gone and worked in my local pub and I've done this and I've got my 90 days common induction training and now I want to go and work for Adam, and how are you going to train me up? And I'm not meaning necessarily on the culinary side, but front of house and soft skills. So one of the things that we have done with the government that they have put a lot of money into, we've now got a national sector-based work academy for hospitality for the first time, and it's the first one of its kind in the country. SWAPs, as they're called, tend to work on somebody like a Jaguar or a Land Rover going into a local job centre saying, I've got 2,000 vacancies, please train them up here and send them back out. And hospitality is around the UK. So we've got 26 areas in the UK that are taking a national accredited, it's not accredited yet, but a national induction programme that my skills director has worked out and worked through with all of the HR directors in the big companies across the sector and the small, to say this is the common induction programme. This is where we work with Springboard and we work with all of those other schemes to be able to get people into the industry. The job centres will find people. Here's the UK hospitality induction training. We give it to them. The government funds it. So work with your local job centres. The government will fund 4 to 6 weeks of training with those people, and then you'll get motivated people who know that they only want to work in hospitality and have some basic training. We're then turning that into a skills passport, a digital skills passport, so that we can capture that, accredit it, have it as sort of basic skills on a mobile phone, so you can go and show somebody, look, I've done this, I've got these elements of my induction programme in place, now train me up on the bit above. If you then put the reform in place, which the government is doing on foundational apprenticeships, that's an apprentice that can be delivered in around 5-6 months. That will be an accelerated level 1 and level 2, can be done modular, can be trained in-house, and you can get the accreditation and pay for your in-house training rather than necessarily having to go to a separate college. And that's more relevant, I think, for the sort of common skills where people might not have decided they want to be a chef. If you employ apprentices, you don't pay any NICs. If you employ somebody under 21, you don't pay NICs. So there are ways and means of being able to do that, but then that would be, it's a big funnel. You've got the great unwashed of 8 million people who are long-term unemployed. The government wants to be able to get them into work. It's helping us at that top level. It's working on the apprenticeships. We can then do the fine stuff on top, the really skilled training. We've got level 3, level 4, level 5, brilliant. But we don't have that mapped out for a young person. We can't take it commonly. You do lots of work in schools, so does Springboard, so does UKH, so do lots of individual businesses. We all tell a different story. It's inevitable, it's all based around our own background, but we haven't got anything that says, you come in here as a 16, 18-year-old, we will invest in you, we will train you. There are too many young people who start in our sector who get no training, no support, and are tipped back out. And one rotten apple in the industry means that we haven't got a good pipeline. So we can help ourselves, we can do all of that. Yes, it takes time, energy, effort, but my team can do a lot of the heavy lifting. The apprenticeship levy will unlock a lot of the funds, and then we can help to deliver that. If we then are able to go back to the government and say, this is what we do, that might help with the reinforcement. So I think it's about buy-in and getting behind the messages when we do a campaign to MPs or to ministers, joining in and supporting, lending your voice and weight in the media. That's what I think we can do more collectively and collaboratively joined up. And today we published a social productivity index, because this government is obsessed with productivity. We are always going to rate lowly on productivity because we're a high volume of people business. It can improve everybody's productivity. Our productivity shot up during COVID. We were shut. Ministers still talk to me about why can't you attain French levels, apology if anybody's French, French levels of productivity in hospitality. The answer is we don't close during the day. Our hospitality businesses tend to be breakfast to dinner, and that's why we've got low productivity. But we have a high social productivity. 85% of our teams are not graduates, don't have degrees. So the class ceiling, there's no barrier to entry. You can start with no experience and no skills, and we will train you up and you will get through. But 55% of our workforce is female, 66% of our workforce is under 30, and when you look at the gender pay gap, we've got the lowest gender pay gap of any industrial sector. So we've got a lot of good stuff that we can talk about in terms of social mobility, social productivity, community work, charity. So we've indexed that to put it alongside economic. So you look at us through the prism of the economy, which Treasury does, we don't rate as highly as other sectors, but if you look at us as socially productive, we do. So let's make a virtue of what we're good at, investing in young people and talent. Sorry, that was a very long answer.
That's okay. Just a couple of points from that. You mentioned no national insurance obligation for apprentices, and that's under 25, I think, for apprentices. And under 21 for employees.
Employees,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We're pushing to see if we can get that apprenticeships NI exemption for any apprenticeship of any age.
Right.
Challenge. We're also pushing for that to be for an exemption for NICs if you take on somebody who's more than 2 years unemployed, long-term sick, disabled, all those characteristics that the government is talking about getting written work in order to funnel it through.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, you know, obviously the Royal Academy of Culinary Arts has got 4 accredited colleges that we work with: Liverpool, UCB, Bournemouth and Westminster. But we've also got this wider college community programme that we launched last year with the School Educational Trust. What we're finding when we go into colleges are 2 main issues. One is that the chef lecturers aren't paid a good enough wage to be good enough to teach the young people. They're not attracting the right people into colleges. And the second issue is that the funding's terrible in further education colleges. Is that on the table? Are those discussions happening?
They are. That's not necessarily something that I lead on. I try and focus.
Avoid.
No, I don't avoid. I try and lend my voice and weight to it as much as I can, but there is a limit to which ones I can focus on. So I try and row in behind somebody else on that bit. Part of that is about making sure that the college network is tied into the apprenticeship schemes so that we can use the money. There is money. And looking at sort of shorter term courses and looking at broader than just catering and culinary. But yes, there is a broader issue around attractiveness. The SWAPS programme that I mentioned, looking at in-work training or training to get people work ready, job ready, apprenticeship ready, is delivered in association with local further education colleges. And comes out of the adult education budget, so it's those rapid 4-week courses to get people upskilled. So that might help to provide that sustainable pathway through, and if you can start to see how you've got that funnel coming through from long-term unemployed or needs, and then you build it into delivery of foundational apprenticeships and shorter-term courses. It's about trying to think about it more flexibly than a classroom-based teaching that's 1 to 2 years on.
Okay.
Just simply getting the door open. Are we in fear, or do we think we're going to be in fear of stagnating? And thus, I totally agree with the self-fixing industry, and we are that very much self-fixing industry. We seem to work our way out of a lot of problems we've had over the years. But in the short term, do you think we're going to be in a position where we're going to stagnate and then thus depleting the revenue that's going to come in from that overseas hospitality that you talked about coming in, and how it's such a lovely place to be because we're not actually moving forward?
I think that's the biggest danger that we've got over the course of the next year, because you can look at sunlit uplands and you can forecast and predict. The fact that we've always written out every other storm that's been thrown at us is a self-perpetuating story from the Treasury, because we just do, we get on and deal with it. So that is the challenge. But yes, what we saw when we asked people around the NIC and the budget changes and the taxes that are coming through in April, around 66% of our businesses said they were going to make staff redundant or they were going to cut hours. or they were going to cut, impact on staff salaries. A similar proportion said that they were going to change their trading hours, so you're going to take time out so you can take out shifts. 86% said that they were going to look at freezing investment, and 97% said they were going to pass it on, some part of it in price. And depending on where you sit in the market is can you cover some or all of it, and what that's looking at. So that middle bit around investment is what I really fear, because you are going to see hunkering down, you're not going to see new innovation, you're going to see empty sites, and you're going to see gaps in the high street, and that deters people from visiting because you're going to have some failures. You're not going to see new entrepreneurial ideas, and also my big fear is that you will see a chunk of the industry move towards automating the mundane. We can never do without our people, but there's a lot of roles that you can take out to be able to make labour resourcing much more fluid and flexible and responsive, and therefore you lose that talent pipeline coming through. And it's fine, I think, we're 139th out of price competitiveness in the global index of tourism destinations. It's fine being really expensive if you can provide great service, great quality food, but if one of those three elements starts to change, then you've got problems, and that's what the big fear is, that you freeze that investment.
Yeah. Do you think that will affect the income and hospitality revenue that you spoke about bankers not going anywhere else, and because it's nice and it's sexy over here?
I don't think it will in the short term, but that will be a longer term thing. If you start to let standards slip, if things don't start to sort of improve and turn around, then yes, it will inevitably impact on investment, both FDI coming into the hotel sector in particular. You've seen an end almost. There's a freeze on private equity, foreign private equity coming into pubs, bars and restaurants. That'll take some time to come back in. I think it'll take time before London starts to lose its crown as the best place to do business, but it could happen. And those 50 million visitors, they're not just going to happen overnight without some concerted effort by the government to drive demand. So the $65 million question, that's by 2030, by the way. That's 10 million more than we get each year now. So that, what is the government going to do to get those people in, to look at visa, to look at welcome, to look at price, to look at costs, and deliver what people want? What we know from the research that Visit Britain and others do is that what they want, a big target, is eating and drinking and socialising like a local, and finding those great places to go out and visit. So we need to give them reasons to come.
Okay. Does anyone in the audience have a question? Diana?
Oh, thank you. Kate, it's absolutely fabulous to hear from the horse's mouth exactly what's happening. Thanks so much. And you're so informative and clear. It's fabulous. You describe how you've been sort of coaching, if I haven't misinterpreted what you said, your politicians about profit and loss and what that means and the vagaries of it, and particularly in the context of hospitality. The kind of message, not just in hospitality but across many industries, is that they don't really understand capital. It seems to me they don't really have a handle, or perhaps there isn't space in their plans to understand. Yes, absolutely, you have a profitable business, but retained profits and building your balance sheet for future investment, etc., is so important. And as David and everybody's alluded to, that's what you can maintain the quality of standard that we need. You can be as precise as you like about profit and loss and have the vagaries of business. And frankly, on a budget, if you're 5% accurate and you're landing on a target, that's good. Often you're 20% out, and that's where balance sheet and building reserves, etc., carries you as an individual, you as a high street, as a community, and everybody else through. And I'm not hearing language that reflects that.
Yes, let's take it a step back. They don't understand revenue versus profit and the bit that goes through the middle, so I still get lots of them saying, but I went out for dinner in London, in Westminster, on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, and it was heaving, and I couldn't get a seat. That business is probably not profitable, and probably is only heaving like that 2 days a week, and you've chosen to go out in the busiest destination at the busiest time. So there's a disconnect there. Most of them don't understand revenue versus profit. There is no understanding of EBITDA. And there is no understanding of investment and retained profits. Because obviously if you are a company that's going to build a plant, or you're going to put a battery thing, or sorry, that's a technical term, or you're going to invest in the grid, you get investment in order to do it. We invest out of our retained profits, so they don't understand that as a concept. They don't understand that you open another restaurant on the basis of the profits of the first, and they have no concept of margin. So, to give you an example, in a different sector, I was presenting to the French Chamber of Commerce, which is French businesses investing in the UK. One of them was a really large bank who sat down with the Chancellor at breakfast when she was talking about city reforms that would mean that banks did come and invest in London, which is important. And he was saying, you know, the NIC change is a £5 million extra cost to his business. And she said, well, you'll just absorb that, won't you? He said, no, I've taken a red line through my P&L and those jobs are going back to France. So there is an assumption that, you know, if you're a Tesco's and you make a certain amount of profit, they don't see that as related to margin and what you're going to do with that. And they assume that you can therefore just absorb all these costs. So, you know, those are the examples that I take to them, saying, you know, I've got a company in membership, they've got 3 restaurants, 2 hotels, a couple of bars. Out of that, half of those businesses are now not viable. If they weren't part of a group, they would be closed. As it is, they're probably going to dispose of 2 of them.
So how can we help you with that?
Fill in the forms. When we go out and do a survey, respond to the survey, add your name when we go out on social media, or we can do dedicated mailings out through RACA. When we say, you know, tell us what's happening, there's a business confidence survey we do quarterly. What are you doing in response to these changes? If you're not a member, you can become a member. We can talk about a group membership to be able to help. Give me the case studies. You know, all of those things. We have a benchmarking survey. I construct a simple P&L for a neighbourhood, community, independent restaurant, for a larger scale, higher revenue restaurant. I do it giving 5 cost lines, because that's as much as they can manage. And I do the sort of, you know, here's the revenue, here's the costs, and I show them what it was like before COVID, after COVID, now. I mean, the danger is that, and this is my balancing act from a communications perspective, I could take all of this negativity, I could present it back out there, I could be relentless all the time about the number of businesses that are going to close, the jobs that are going to be lost, the problems that you've got. Nobody would get any investment, the banks would not invest in you, your credit ratings would all shift. No, why would anybody want to come and work in a sector that is unremittingly gloomy? I think we need to start talking about, you know, yes, it's challenging, but we do need to start talking about how resilient we can be to try and improve that element around getting investment and getting people.
So a proactive, positive story of what goes on in hospitality.
At the right time.
Yeah.
At the right time.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience, from our guests? Yes?
Well done, your job is a very tough one.
Thank you.
So for me, exactly, what are the success stories? Where do you feel I was able to move the needle, and do you know, what can we learn from that otherwise?
Well, people seem to have very short memories about what we actually achieved at UK hospitality during COVID. Furlough, grants, loans, business rates reductions. As I say, nobody's paid full business rates since 2019. The sector-based work academy, that's an £8 million government investment in training in 26 locations. So it's co-created solutions, I think, is what we can learn. Business rates reform, apprenticeship levy reform, it's working with government to be able to say, if you do this, we can do so much more, and how we can try and deliver it. And then if you read a recent profile that somebody did of me, where I accidentally said, in my past I'd saved the prawn cocktail crisp. Apparently that is the biggest achievement of my career today.
It's a great achievement.
Yeah, I mean, the one I'm more fond of is that we wouldn't have been able to call dairy milk chocolate without me. Wow.
Okay, that's quite a claim to fame.
It is. But yeah, I think those are the ones I would look at. And then in the current government, we've got hospitality and tourism written into the industrial strategy. We've got it written into the investment strategy, the trade strategy. We've secured, despite not being one of the growth sectors and despite government telling us that meant we wouldn't have a sector strategy, we've got a high street and hospitality strategy and we've got a visitor economy strategy. We have to seize those, make the most of them. As I say, nothing is going to offset the NICs. I don't pretend that for a minute. But if we can change some areas where government is going to keep us as the top priority, keep talking about what they can do to support growth, drive some consumer demand, that will help.
Any other questions? Yes.
Question for my club secretary. Would hospitality we be able to re-employ a member of staff from Europe at no cost?
I think. What's the phrase that, you know, the impossible I can't do, but miracles might take some time. It's a hugely toxic debate, hugely toxic, and the message we get back from government is please don't talk about it openly. Let's work on some solutions that are behind the scenes. Yes, it will happen. It's a condition of the EU for the reset and the Brexit renegotiation 2027. Youth mobility. As part of a trade deal, and it was Europe that turned it down when we did the Brexit agreement, not the UK, because they wouldn't give the UK what the UK wanted. But for every other trade deal, we've got 3-year working visas for under 30s, and that's what they're looking at doing. I don't think we'll get 3 years. I'd settle for 1. I'd also settle for, not settle, but if we got that sort of youth mobility, I'd also, if they agreed to have an internship program for hospitality, we have nothing. I can't go out to a foreign university and get a young person in for a year to do work experience. Can't do a stagiaire. So working on those too. The Home Office is looking at proposals and we're hoping we'll get support for that. But yeah, youth mobility. We've got it for Europe, Australia, we've got it for Australia, New Zealand, Canada. They were talking about it for the India trade deal, not sure whether that will come off because that's a large number of people. But that would be no cost to the employer, it doesn't have skills, doesn't have a salary. It's working holiday visas.
What I mean by no cost is like, for example, you could come and work here, but if you have, for example, a minimum wages, if you're not able to have a minimum wages, you wouldn't be able to come and work here.
That's not part of the youth mobility scheme that we've got in any other area. It's no salary restrictions, no skill restrictions. It's not like the skilled worker visas. So the only minimum salary would be minimum wage and living wage.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Patricia, I just wondered, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here.
Oh,
Sorry. This is Patricia Yates from Visit Britain, I'm the CEO of Visit Britain. I wondered if you'd like to add anything to anything Kate said, just as from your perspective.
I was smiling through...
Come and join us.
I was smiling as Kate described what it's like working with government ministers, actually. So the difference between Kate and I is that Kate lobbies and I advise. So a lot of advice is best given person to person and not in public, so we have to be very careful what we say in public, because obviously we're a government-funded body. Many of the messages are exactly the same. And I would say the tourism minister is a really passionate minister, and he's come out with this amazing ambition. The difficulty from his perspective is that DCMS do not control the levers that actually drive tourism, whether that's business departments or home offices. So it is a whole government approach that is needed, and DCMS isn't top of the pecking order, if I could do like that, in government departments. But I think we do have a really passionate minister who is keen to learn, and the target and the focus that he's given us is, half of our visitors are London, come to London and don't go anywhere else. So he wants to drive that economic growth. It's all about growth right across Britain. We have just launched Star in Great Britain, which is our big international campaign where Britain is the star of the show. I don't know if you've seen the video. If not, please look at YouTube and see it. Where we've used scenes that you'll see in movies and then turn that into a tourism sell as well. And the international trade have been really positive about that because they say it gives us that certainty, means that we will build product to support you. And I was out at ITB in Berlin, the biggest a European trade show, and meeting with suppliers who were saying they were going to do that. So there is huge ambition to drive inbound tourism in particular. I don't think the government understands how important the domestic industry is, and Treasury sees that as displacement. I.e. you spend the money in B&Q or you'll spend it in a hotel, and so getting that story over, no, actually you'll spend it in an English hotel or you'll spend it in a Greek hotel, where would you rather it go? And Kate and I do a lot of work on saying to the Minister, well, you've got the target for international, why don't you have a target for domestic? And I think that would really change the narrative of government thinking about how do they drive tourism. And I'm sure for lots of your businesses, it's 80% domestic, and the international is the sort of cherry on the cake. But goodness, we need the cake. There we are. I'll stop talking.
Thank you. Sorry to put you on the spot. Thank you. Please join me in thanking Kate and Patricia. We took a lot, I know we took a lot with apprentices and college students about resilience, teaching them resilience. And I know we talk about the hospitality industry as being resilient, but it seems like we're going to need a lot of that over the next 12, 18 months. I jotted down some kind of glimmers of hope that I thought there were. I guess we've got the hospitality business rates relief, which is a bit of a glimmer. A cut in draft alcohol duty, although I heard this morning that that's going up again, so we'll have to take that one out. There are various forms of help for small businesses in many different ways as well, so for our SMEs in the audience today, hopefully you can find some of those smaller elements of help. There's also the increase to the employment allowance from 5,000 to 10,500, which is good news again for SMEs. For pubs and clubs, maybe this has changed today too, a cut to draft alcohol served via a pump duty of 1.7%.
There is a cut, but no brewer is passing it on.
Okay.
Similarly, I have yet to see a wine merchant pass on the lower duty for Prosecco.
Oh, okay, all right. And then the frontline workers in hospitality. For frontline workers, the budget was good news with higher wages, while taxes in the wage slip remain fairly static. So that's another little glimmer, perhaps, but it sounds like we're all going to have to stick together and support each other moving forward for a little time anyway. Thanks again to Kate. We're just going to have a little comfort break now, folks, and then we'll go straight into dinner. Thank you very much.
I just want to summarise a few things from today. Thanks for coming. It is always great to see so many academicians. This again was a sold-out plenary, so it's great to see you all here. And I think it's fantastic to see Kate here. That for me is about value add for members and trying to make sure that we're bringing value to RACA members. So having Kate here today was incredibly special, and to hear her words. But we can talk about that in a second if you like. There's lots to unpick and unwrap on that. I just want to say very quickly thank you to Lionel Lanches, the Director of Food and Beverage, and Francisco Hernández, the Executive Chef of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group, for your hospitality today. And a very warm welcome to Victoria from Champagne Bollinger, who are the sponsors here today and a new partner with RACA as well. So it's great to have you here. Thank you very much. And we look forward to many things with you with the annual Award of Excellence and everything else. So yeah, it was great to have Kate here today. There's an awful lot of that to unpick for me as a separate from RACA, just as someone who owns an SME. there's a lot of information there to unpick and to go through, but I felt quite privileged to be able to hear that slight inside track. I think I phrased it to Lisa privately. It was a bit like knowing the armoury of your enemy, almost in a way, but you know, I don't mean it like that, but you know, it is a bit like that. I felt I was not that surprised, but I found it quite frightening how little information the government actually have and slightly inept they are financially. I thought it was quite a big surprise, and it is worrying that they don't actually understand the mechanism by which our models work. So that's a bit of a take home for me, and I guess we need to look at that. The other thing I think I took away from that was the way that I thought Kate framed this very well, is that if she just keeps pushing this negative narrative around how bad this is, then the investment and the people wanting to join our industry and people wanting to get involved and supply the industry, etc., all that enthusiasm would shrink. And I really understood that, and I didn't probably understand that enough before. So there was definitely a key piece in there for me. But I think the key question, and Lisa, you do a brilliant job, by the way. You're very good. The key question is more around what RACA could do for UK hospitality. You know, she runs a completely different thing. She doesn't have to be here and present to us. She's done that, and I think that's a great thing that she's done there. But what can RACA do for UK hospitality, and in turn the wider industry, and that piece around the people and the power that we have inside RACA to be able to back her up with case studies and back her up with media that we all get the opportunity to do and sing it from one voice. I'm under absolutely no illusion that there's going to make no difference whatsoever. That's my take home. This is not going to make any difference. We are now in the pond we're in, and we're going to have to just deal with it. And I'm glad that she was as frank as she was about something that I have read lots before and chose not to believe, which is that essentially that Cinderella effect, whereby our industry will just regenerate. It will just die off and regenerate and die off and regenerate, and we've always been so good at that. And there's a lot of talk about that during COVID, and I've always thought about it and thought, no, you can't, surely that's, but it is true. It absolutely is true, and they do view hospitality like that. You know, I think they would have a slightly different viewpoint if it combusted like it did, and I think there's going to be enough of an impact from this, from what I know. That they will have to listen. But hey, listen, it was great to have Kate here, and I thought it was brilliant with us. Thank you, Lisa, and the privilege to hear her. So and thank you to the hotel for their wonderful hospitality today. Thank you. And hand over to Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to Victoria and Champagne Volunteer, I'd like to once again thank Flying Fish Seafood, Woods Food Service, Barry Plumbow and Jeroboam's Trade for their contributions today. I'd also like to take this opportunity, it's a little bit late in the day, but to mention His Majesty King Charles Royal Warrants that were awarded at the end of last year. We haven't formally acknowledged them yet, and we've got Town and Country Fine Foods, Aubrey Allen, who were due to be with us today but are not, unfortunately. I beg your pardon, I'm so sorry. That's because Simon's not here, holding me in the back. And Champagne Volunteer, of course, and King's Fine Food, who were all acknowledged in His Majesty King Charles Royal Warrants last year. So congratulations. We're going to keep this quite short and sweet today because I know we've been here a bit longer than normal. Gemma isn't here today. Gemma, who's the programme manager for a doctor's school. She's at the Springboard final today, which has taken place at Westminster Capital College. But she's asked me to remind you all about the next Doctor School fundraising dinner on the 16th of May at the RAC Pall Mall. And we've got the RAC team cooking alongside chefs Roberta Hall from the Little Chart Room in Edinburgh, Lisa Goodwin-Allen and Franciani Tartari. The menu looks fabulous, and I'd encourage you all to either book yourselves in or send the details on to your wider network. This is the 35th year of a doctor's school, and it would be fantastic to have a good turnout for that reason alone. Some dates for your diaries. The next plenary will be up in Scotland. We are keeping to our promise to try and take a plenary outside of London every year. We're delighted to be going up to the Balmoral. We've got an academician there, Ross Snedden, and Adam does lots of work with Balmoral as well. Bookings are open on our website, and the booking link was also in our last newsletter. We have a date for this year's annual general meeting. It's slightly later this year, but it will be held at the Hotel Café Royal, and it's on the 27th of October. I hope everyone noted that date down. Okay. With regards to our educational activities, I'm delighted to announce the next 10 colleges that we'll be working with within the College Community Programme. They are Blackburn College, Trinity St David, the University of Wales, Manchester College, Perth College, Milton Keynes College, Darlington College, Leeds College, Truro and Penrith, Eastleigh College and Loughborough. If you'd like to work alongside us on any of these colleges and can support, please speak to either myself or Neil Rippington, and we will be reaching out to you all with regards to requests from these colleges to bring people, academician members, into the colleges and vice versa. And finally, just a quick update on the Annual Awards of Excellence and the Master of Culinary Arts. The Annual Awards of Excellence is in full swing in partnership with Champagne Bollinger. And thank you to everyone here who has already been involved in the judging. The MCA plans are well underway, and we have a launch venue, which we will announce very soon, with a date in October. And that's it from me and Adam today, unless anyone's got any questions or anything they want to say from this morning's presentation from Kate. If there's any other questions that perhaps Adam and I can answer, or any questions we can take back to Kate, or even had a bit of time to digest what she said. If you don't want to do it here, you can email me and I can send those questions on. And that's it. Thank you very much.